Every fight we've ever had has been about expectations. Unmet, uncommunicated, total fails. But in reality, this is the most common root problem in relationships. And so today, we're going to talk about how you can avoid this common pitfall coming up next.
Hey everyone, we're Drew and Katie Taylor. We're passionate about helping you reach new heights in your marriage and building faithful family cultures. We're excited to be jumping into this marriage series talking about expectations today. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe and definitely check out the description because we're going to leave all of our resources below.
One of the things that we most experienced and saw in our own relationship and those that we've journeyed with is when we fall into complacency. And it's really easy to say, I've read a bunch of books or I've taken classes and I know everything that's kind of out there about marriage. I'm also married. So, really, what else could I learn? And doesn't apply perfectly to my spouse. And when we get into that mindset, we in fact limit our ability for growth. And so, Drew and I are really passionate about taking the opportunities that are given to us to grow, to continue to set goals for our marriage, to strive to reach new heights, because any time that we've sat down and rested has been when things have gotten
Rocky.
a little rough. And so right now, we just want to talk about how setting some goals, clear expectations in your relationship about where it's going can make all the difference.
Yeah, so one saying that we heard that I think just really rang true to our hearts, and we've said it over and over again, is that expectations are premeditated resentments. Expectations are premeditated resentments. So what does that mean?
Often, we hold an expectation. We may not even externally know that or be able to express it or put it into words, but I have some opinion about how the day is going to go, how my marriage is going to look, what time I'm going to go to bed, what I'm going to do in my free time, what my kids are going to be like, the activities that they're going to be involved in, what school is going to look like for them, all the child rearing questions, my faith, how we live that out individually as a couple. I have all these expectations, all of these visions, and maybe I've learned some of them from TV, some of them from just friends and those that have influenced my life. But all of a sudden, my experiences, my family of origin is starting to shape what I think life should look like. And then sometimes I'm able to express that, and other times I hold that internally. And it can cause friction between the two of us.
Yeah, so the first type of expectations would be external. So those are expectations that you communicate with your spouse saying, hey, here is how I wish the day could go. Here's how I think we should find time for us to have date night, whatever it is. And so that would be external. So we always recommend getting as much expectations as you can out there because it's so freeing once you've just set the expectation and now everyone's on the same page. Recently, we put together a family kind of calendar, like a weekly calendar. And at first I was a little nervous because just setting things in stone is, in my mind, doesn't have a lot of flexibility. I'm kind of a go with the flow kind of guy. But actually, when we put it down on paper, it was so nice because I'm like, no, this is when I have to go to work. And this is when I'm going to be home. And then that allows Katie to be able to plan kind of out her day and for dinner time and bedtime for the kids. So it was really freeing in a way when we were expressing those external expectations to each other.
And we took a lot of this from either A Mother's Rule of Life. In that book, also, I had the same experience. I read it and I was like, oh, this sounds incredible and really good. But again, I don't want to lock myself into a schedule. I have 3 kids. Their schedules constantly change. Like, come up with excuse. I gave it. And then also Kimberly Hahn talks a lot about this too in Grace and Gifted. And so she calls it a plan for life because she thinks that the wording should be a little bit more flexible. But it's the concept of when I lay out what is my priority and how do I order my life to meet the goals, the expectations that I have in a way that is actually free. And so then I can go to a block schedule or I can go to kind of a daily norms or a clear timeline, which really allows us to communicate. If Drew knows he takes morning shift a lot right now, he knows what time I'm going to get up, so he doesn't feel like he's just out there forever indefinitely. There's no break coming
Lord of the
ever.
Flies on my own in the morning.
But it's something because it clears. Yeah. Okay, this is what time she's going to wake up and pray. This is what time she's going to come out. And so now there's not resentment between the other person of like, why were you in there praying and sleeping while I'm out here with our kids that are wonderful and beautiful, but I'm tired because I've been up since 5. And so it just really helps when we have a clear communication. So we want to break down how Drew hates the word priorities because priority has to have just one. And so
priority. That's what the word comes from.
Priority.
Can only be one.
But this has 6 in order. So it's your number 1 priority is God.
Yeah, it's prayer.
Prayer. So they use the letter P to start all of these, but God. And I think that that's so important because it's really tempting in society and just in life right now to put 100,000 things before prayer, before our relationship with God. We're busy. It's like the last thing on my to-do list. I kind of want to do it, but at the same time, like it doesn't always make the cut. And yet that is idolatry. It is, it's really hard, but it's really important because our entire life has to flow out of that.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about making God number 1 on the priority list is the fact that when you build your relationship with God, that overflows into your marriage and your family. And so you plant a seed and you get 100-fold out of that. You know what I mean? Like it's not time wasted. That's time that you're investing that multiplies and makes your whole life better. So I just think about it sometimes you're not wasting time anytime that you pray. You are actually building yourself up and giving yourselves the graces that you need for the other steps or kind of checklist in your life.
And so the way this works is I would really recommend, sitting by yourself and maybe having some time in prayer to answer some questions about these 6 different priorities in your life. And then to come together as a couple and have an intentional date, or like we did when we were at the YMCA and our kids were in the childcare, to sit down with a computer and really talk through what is the best schedule. And so fitting that time for you guys to really break this out. And so in prayer, looking at questions like how often do I need to go to mass? How often do I need to go to confession? What is the amount of time I need to spend daily in prayer? How am I going to take a Sabbath to really reconnect with God? Where am I going to be able to go to spiritual direction? Where am I? And so kind of these questions as your bare minimum. What is your minimum to have a relationship with the Lord of the universe? And how is that going to be incorporated into your day-to-day, weekly and monthly or yearly? Also, how often do we have a retreat?
Yeah.
Personally, as a family, and that being on the calendar, because if it's not on the calendar, let's be honest, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
It can't. And then, so after prayer, the second is person.
Yeah. I think this is also important to have this in priority because it's easy to put kids or your spouse or football or whatever. Work. Yeah. All of these things above just taking care of yourself.
And I think it's important to remember that the commandment is to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Well, in order to do that, you have to love yourself. And so you can't keep giving if you are not being replenished and refreshed. And so do I need naps? Do I need a mother's helper to come in? How often do I need to work out? Yeah. How am I going to facilitate that? What am I eating? Is it healthy? How am I fueling my body emotionally, physically, and spiritually, which we covered a lot in prayer, but how do I allow for that? One of the things that was probably most life-giving was the idea of a monthly Sabbath, where it wasn't like, oh, I'll take 4 hours. She was like, I could take as long as I need it, and I came home whenever I was actually refreshed. She's like, one night, that was very late into the night, and I was like, what? Yeah. this is a radical concept. Instead of giving myself 2 hours, like, oh, it just in then having the conversation with you who's like, absolutely, I'd support you doing that. Oh, okay. Which removes the guilt from me.
Mhm.
It clears the expectation. We don't have to have a fight when I don't come home.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, and I think when you look at this, right, this isn't like a selfish, I'm
mhm,
gonna do all the things that make me happy and ignore my spouse, my family, everything. These are intentional things that help you to be refreshed and to become and step back into being a better husband and a better father and better at work and all those things. So it's really just taking care of yourself so that you can serve others.
absolutely. And then the third
Hmm.
is your spouse, your
Hmm.
partner.
Yeah.
We have really seen through personal experience the effects of when parents put kids first.
Yeah, it's tough. It's easy to do.
It is. They're louder, they scream, they're throwing tantrums on the floor,
Ah,
and it
yeah.
gets my attention. It does.
Yeah.
And yet, if we spend 20 plus years in putting the kids first, our marriage will incredibly suffer. And the reality is so will they.
Hmm. Yeah, really the best thing that you can do, other than having a faith life and just taking care of yourself, is to have a marriage that's on fire. Like, what a
Mhm.
better thing you can provide for your children than that? And so, yeah, so prioritize it, right? Make date nights, have hobbies or activities that you guys like to do, start a YouTube channel and make videos about marriage.
And with that, you don't have to always be going out and spending money. Like,
Yeah,
can you do a fun cheese date with
yeah.
wine and special cheese and sit around a fire table? These are all things that we do in our own house. What night of the week is your relax,
Hmm.
reconnect, and celebrate together what you've accomplished that week? And also in that, incorporating, these vision, these goals, these priorities. Anytime that we have had a goal to work towards together, it's actually given us stuff to talk about.
Hmm.
It's fed our relationship, it's inspired us, it's drawn us closer. And so when we're able to look at each other as a team and as a
Yeah.
partnership, there's just such a joy that can come out of that and really answer the question of what do you talk to your spouse about, which
Hmm.
is a common question that really having these fun activities, hobbies together allows.
Hmm. All right. So the next one is going to be parenting. So we talked about prayer, personal, partner, and now parenting. So now,
Mhm.
after you pray, after you take care of yourself, after you build this relationship up with your spouse, now you can start investing in the kids. And it's
Mhm.
super important, right? We have to uh, nurture them. We have to teach them. We have
Mhm.
to inspire them. We have to pass on the faith. We have to feed them, change their diapers. These are all things we have to do. But it's so important. And I think it's such a heroic thing to just be a parent in today's society. It's so
Mhm.
undervalued, but it is so incredibly important. There's only so many years that we have them in the house that we can invest in them on love on them. So make that important.
The Mother Teresa of Calcutta quote comes to mind of if you want to change the world, go home and love your family.
Yeah.
And there is something incredibly powerful about being able to love into their lives,
Mhm.
to learn how they love, how they feel loved, how they learn, how to inspire them, how to encourage
Mhm.
them, how to connect with them. And so there's so much out there on parenting, and maybe we'll do a video about some of the things that we've learned along the way. We are still very much learning,
Yeah.
is how we can truly pour ourselves and be a gift to them in a radical way that is sanctifying,
Mhm.
um, but also just joyful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, when I tell myself the stories that they are abusive, difficult, don't listen, disobedient, and really hard, then those are the stories that I stick with. But when I tell myself and I remind myself of all the little good moments
Yeah.
that we have throughout the day, when I sit in those in thanksgiving and gratitude, it grows my joy and it grows my just radical excitement, radical appreciation for being a mother, this gift that I have been given. The next priority
is providing. And so that's going to be your job, right? How you are doing things around the house to have a house to live in, and kind of all of the other details about the admin of living that now we do have to pay the bills.
Yes. And so this might be the biggest block of time on your daily schedule that you would build out, but this is something that we want to put as the priority under loving, under our family, because this is for the good of the family, not the family is not there to support that.
Yeah, and if you don't, right, this can so easily just grow and encompass everything. It's so easy to just work more hours
Oh, yeah.
and just do other things besides loving your family and loving your God and loving your spouse.
So tempting.
Yeah. And then the last one, the sixth one that Kimberly Hahn talks about is playing on the periphery. And I like the way that she puts this, but there are still a lot of other things in life that you have to do, right? Being part of a community, all of like the church events, evangelizing, right? Like maybe you feel called to host a Bible study. Where does that fit into all of these things? And I think all of those things are important to do, but again, in the right order to make sure that you are taking care of these things that will refresh you, that will inspire you, that will give you energy to be able to pour yourself into those periphery items.
And that would include family,
like
outside of your nuclear family.
Super important.
All of those things are so important, but again, they will easily slide into number one if given the freedom to do that. And so really sitting down with intentionality, again, avoids the conflict over expectations because you've thought this out and you've started to really know yourself and know what you desire. And when you start to write all of these things out, when you start to have these conversations, that growth of just becoming aware of what is internally driving you in external behaviors, and it really allows for freedom and an avoidance of conflict. With that, I think things that we've talked about of just things that need expectations on a day-to-day is what time Drew gets off. How often is the fight over the fact that I thought you were going to be home at this time, but now it's like 45 minutes later and I'm still waiting. Like, do I put the kids to sleep? What is and so just the little pre-planning either the day before, a heads up that this may run long. If it does, what's our norm? What's our expectations? With that, sex, how often we are going to have sex, when that's going to be, what that's going to look like. It's good to have those conversations. It really is. And then when we wake up, what time that is, what time we go to bed. We've talked a lot about children and rearing norms. Are we going to spank? Are we not going to? Are we going to have a family bed? Are we not going to? Are we going to? There's so many questions out there that it is really a conversation that needs to happen between you and your spouse. And you guys need to be on the same page because you're going to be the ones living with any of those repercussions of those choices on the day-to-day.
Yeah. So I think we talked about the external things, and these are, again, all things that we really recommend just talking over, writing it down, and that way, it's just so clear. And then you can't get upset at each other because you guys have agreed upon it before, and it really is freeing. So that's the external one. The next one category is going to be internal expectations, and these are ones that you expect, but you don't voice to your spouse. And these are what we were talking about of being premeditated resentments, because you actually have something that you expect of your spouse. And if they don't live up to it, you're going to be mad at them, but they don't even know why you're mad because you never talked about it or agreed upon. So it can be super dangerous to have those.
Yeah.
And then the last one is going to be really ones that you don't even know, expectations that you don't even know that you have. And that's why I think it's important to learn about yourself, even things like the 5 love languages by Dr. Gary Chapman, of just, how do I feel loved? How do I feel like my love tank is full? And that way you can start to express those things. But it's just like knowing a little bit more about yourself. You start to look at your family of origin. So how were you raised? What was your parents' relationship like?
Mm-hmm.
How did they raise the kids? Um, all of these things affect your relationship with your spouse, with God. And so just learning more about yourself will bring some of those expectations to the surface. And now you can start to voice those and work through those.
I think of even temperament. And another book
Yeah.
would be recommended would be The Temperament God Gave My Spouse.
Mm-hmm.
So not only can you read it for yourself and then for understanding your spouse, being able to really grow, because this is the relationship that you are most in contact with. That there is the potential of rubbing up against each other, and learning how you're different
Mm-hmm.
I will in fact enable you to love better. And with that, there's so much more on this topic.
Yeah.
But for this episode, we just want to go ahead and say thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for investing in your marriage. Know that we are praying for you. Until next time, please leave a comment below if you have any questions about what we talked about. We'll leave a lot of resources in the description. And know until next time, we are praying for you.